The lesson.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go. We got the man, Jake BIZ, 750 Rebels in Brisbane. Beers beats in the biz. How you doing?
Yeah, good, bro. Good. Been a long time coming.
Yeah. There's been a bit of back and forth, but we finally made it happen.
That's it, man. That's it. It's what it is. We always make things happen, man. That's how we do it.
And I guess, as someone that runs a podcast themselves, you would know better than anyone else about how some interviews you can make happen in a week or two.
Yeah.
And others can take a couple of months. Some could maybe even take a couple of years,
Dude, man, some people you can lock in and then the next, then on the day it's over and done. Yeah, man, it's a pain in the ass. I know what it is. And, Ben, honestly, I appreciate the time you've taken with me because I know we've gone to make this happen on numerous occasions and stuff like that. And yeah, man, it's dope to be finally sitting here doing it, man. It's long overdue.
And look, you've obviously got a pretty deep history. You've been around for a minute, early 2000s to my knowledge. It might even go back further than that.
Yeah.
But before we get into all that, the Beers Beats and the Biz podcast, man, congratulations.
Yeah.
That's really,
Thank you,
that's really taken off and become, one of, if not the prominent Australian rap podcast in the country, man.
Yeah, man, it's pretty crazy. I mean, honestly, man, prior to us doing it, it was really only you guys doing what you were doing. There wasn't a whole lot going on, I know there was, there's a few other different things, bits and pieces happening, definitely radio shows, obviously, but yeah, man, it's grown into something. It's sort of grown beyond anything that I initially imagined it to be. It's been hard to keep up with it almost. It's been pretty crazy.
What was the first episode?
Dude, the first ever episode was Bigfoot, and we recorded him in late 2018. And I think we did the Bigfoot episode, and I remember, man, at the time I was just like, I don't know whether I can do this, we actually recorded 2 or 3. We recorded a dude called Mike Reed prior to that, but we were set up on a dodgy camp table and all that sort of shit, and Mike had jewelry on and stuff, and just the audio was all fucked up. But Bigfoot was the first ever episode. He sat down with us, and that was late 2018, man, when we sort of kicked that off. And we've had a lot of breaks, a lot of things have happened in between, late 2018, I think September 2018, something like that is when it all sort of teed off. And we've taken a few breaks over the course of that time, but yeah, man, we're fucking trying to get consistent with it and stay at it and, be far more professional with it, man, because obviously, we've kind of seen the potential of it now. Initially it was just, just go. It was kind of all systems go, but yeah, late 2018 is when it kicked off.
And then so because I was listening to the Shazlik 1 episode. Is that the most recent?
That's our latest episode, man. Yeah. Then the COVID kind of gripped Brisbane, and man, I didn't get COVID. I got sick. I got like a 24-hour bug. But then Russ Insidious, he got the COVID. So, so we had, we were set to go following Shaz. We had 2 guests lined up for 1 week, and we had to just pull the pin, just couldn't go down the studio. With my work, I've got a day job and shit, and I've got to be conscious of, I work with, I do support work, so I work with a good friend of mine, but who has no immune system, so we got to be careful about how we navigate this shit, regardless. I mean, I sort of said, man, fuck, 18 months ago, man, dude still got sick, dude's got up and had to go to work, there was no kind of there was no excuse for it. But these days, it's a different world, man. We got to navigate what we got to navigate, and it's sort of put a bit of a dampener on the, the opening week of our year. But yeah, I mean, as of recording this, Shaz was last week, so yeah, he was our first episode back. We had to take this week off, but we're back in the studio tomorrow. So yeah, man, yeah, we're just trying to navigate that COVID like everyone else. It's crazy.
So what episode number is that Shaz one?
Ooh, Shaz, 86 or 7? 87, I think.
Wow. And so you've had, and that's all different guests? You haven't had anyone in twice?
No, we've had Delta on twice. So we had Delta for a part 1, and Delta was just incredible, man, and we just couldn't get through it all in 3 hours, so he came back for a part 2. And we've also had just a good friend of mine, Ken Oath, on twice. And Ducats. Dude up here, Ducats, young dude, not even that young, man, like mid-30s, but a Krishna dude, and just good energy, man. Like, I fuck with Ducats and I fuck with what he does, and yeah, I think they're the only people we've had on twice. We've just had those 3.
Bigfoot being the first episode, when it came down to doing that, what was the actual thought process behind launching it? Like, why is it that you decided to do this?
Because I didn't see anyone else doing it. Honestly, podcasts. I discovered podcasts via Robbie Edelson's blog, uncut.com. And I discovered the Combat Jack show and Juan Epstein and all that. And I was standing in a warehouse printing stickers. I was a screen printer by trade. And obviously working on rap. Like I've always said, man, work just facilitated the life beyond it. That's all it did. Like it was a job, it was a paycheck, so I could go fucking make music, write raps, do everything outside of work, pay my rent and all that sort of shit. And I was actually doing the radio show with Chubbs up here. I was doing Fat Tape, and it was sort of coming to the tail end of it. And I used to say to Chubbs, I'd be like, man, we should be doing a fucking podcast, because I was listening to Combat Jack, and I was thinking, man, he's documenting what was in that city, in New York City, in LA, and documenting so much culture, and I didn't see it being documented here that way. We were reaching a point here in Australia where this shit's now a couple of decades old. We've had people making music, painting, all that kind of thing since the mid 80s. At the time of starting, and so dude, we're talking fucking 3 decades now. So, and no one was talking those stories, man. We had the Triple J hip hop show, we had the community hip hop shows, but who was talking to those artists, who was getting those stories? There's more than one way to engage with art, with music, a piece on a wall, a dude spinning records in a club. There's more than one way to engage with that, and that's by I think hearing the story behind it, the story of how that came to be, and in some ways that's as fascinating as the art itself. That's kind of how it came about, and it was definitely inspired by the Combat Jack show and all that kind of thing, man. Just hearing that and those podcasts getting me through the tail end of this job that I was still in, because I since left that job a long time ago. But that shit throughout the mid to late 2000s, really got me through, and it was inspiring, man, listening to those. I'd be hearing any random dude, not even all rappers, he was talking to someone like a Jessica Rosenblum who used to run nightclubs in the 80s in New York City, and then was a manager, used to run Stress and all this kind of thing, and was all that, and it was just hearing those stories, man, hearing crazy old stories and shit, and that to me was inspiring, and I know firsthand that existed here, I was there when crazy, amazing albums were being made, like when Band in Queensland was being made, and we toured, we performed the stage's set launches, and we were there for amazing moments in history, and I think there's room for those stories to be told.
With the 80 plus episodes that you have shot to date, which are it's hard to pin it down to one, which are the ones that off the top of the head really stand out for you so far, and why?
In recent times, man, the podcast has kind of been sort of going from strength to strength in recent times. There's ones, man, the first podcast where I thought we smashed it was DJ Catch back on episode 6. I think that was the first time we sat down and we just had this conversation that just seemed so natural, It didn't require editing, and I was talking to friends prior to that. It's not like I'm talking to, but I was, man, doing it. I can't listen back to the shit, because I become too self-critical of it. I'm like, man, fuck, I can't listen back to them. But that was the first one where I just sat down and went, oh man, this was all right. We got to the end of it, we just chatted for 2.5 hours, and it was like, man, we're chucking this out edit-free, no edits. And then, it was probably a few episodes again, when we had Len 1 on. He just started the Miles Ago thing, and talking to Lenny was like talking to a mentor, and just sitting down and just kicking it, having Trem sit opposite me, just kicking it. In recent times, talking to Johnny Jewel, talking to Murder, some of the Melbourne graffiti writers that I used to I'd be like, man, these dudes, these dudes were at the forefront of something that I don't think that they were even aware of at the time, graffiti culture was so young globally, and they were innovating here in this, in Melbourne. They were innovating style, so talking with those dudes, and even talking with Shaz the other week, man. We actually spoke to Shaz just before Christmas, and then we released it as our first episode back for the new year. And just getting those stories, man, they're the ones, Delt's dude, you can go through the list, man. We've had some amazing conversations. I think we've given people crazy moments. The Hype Twins, we had the Hype Twins come in, and it's a difficult listen. It would have been an easier watch, but they're two identical twins that hadn't seen one another and have a history, man. You know, like they have, you know, a certain history. You know, you go back to the episode, they talk about it themselves, you know, with drugs and all that kind of thing. And they hadn't seen one another for 10 years as of recording that. And they'd hopped in a car together, like with fucking 3 other people, travelled down to the studio, and that was their first time seeing one another in all that, you know, in a decade almost, you know. So, you know, like that was pretty crazy. Man, yeah, off the top, like they're some of the favourites, man. You know, but talking to everyone, like, you know, everyone deserves their spot, you know, like when we're live here from No One Network, we had Kyle Golly and Nerve on real early, you know, like we had, you know, mad dudes, man, like mad dudes, all kinds of dudes. But yeah, I mean, we definitely focus on the history, but also the legends in the making, man, because there's dudes just creating history now, you know, like dudes are doing it in the moment. And Biz Beats in the Biz, the lesson, you know, there's other people, like, man, we're creating history just by documenting that history in a way.
In terms of the guys that you haven't interviewed yet, but you would like to interview, what are some of the names that come to mind and why those particular guys?
Puzzle. Man, I've gone backwards and forwards with Puzzle, and I'm just throwing it out there, man. I've sort of alluded to it on numerous podcasts, and we've spoken, and we were locked in to do it, and then he pulled the pin one day, and then he went, just give me some time, and then in that time, he's released his book, you know, his puzzle book. He released Wildfire, the Adelaide documentation. He released the Zenith book. You know, so he was working on a lot of things just prior to us talking to him. He would have had all those things going on. And, you know, so we had to pull the pin on that. And then he hit me back one day and said, right, let's do this. And it was during a period that I was going through where I just couldn't, man, I just wasn't up to doing the podcast for a few months there. So I wasn't doing it. So I was just like, bro, like, listen, I'm not doing it at the moment, but just give me a month or two and get back on top of shit and we'll do it. Puzzle's high on the list. I'd love to have Brad Strutt on. I want to have Lays on. You know, obviously, like I just don't push people, man. Like I got a relationship with Lays. I worked with Lays for close to 2 decades on music, you know, but I don't push him, man, because he isn't that dude, man. Like he's not, you know, like he's not about doing those interviews, even if it's just sitting opposite me without a camera and shit like that, you know. Who else? Fuck, I don't know, man. Like, you know, we're kind of just ticking off the list. A lot of, you know, I want to get around the country a bit more. So, you know, I'd like to get Trials. I'd like to go over to Perth a bit more. Get Matty B. Get Disaster. Get Shine. Get Dash. Get more dudes from Adelaide, just more dudes around the country, man. Reach out to the Northern Territory, you know, because in recent times we have been kind of focused on, I mean, I suppose the podcast has always been focused on Melbourne, but I have been conscious of trying to get out there, you know, like, man, getting Sir Rec back on from Death Wish Cast or having Death Wish Cast on as a collective would be amazing, you know, and then beyond that, doing the show live, I think, you know, like at a point, building the show to do live and then bringing these guests live. So, you know, it's a kind of roundabout way of answering that, but yeah, there is, you know, there's a handful of people on top of the list that I would love to get at, that the door is always open for. Atone from Sydney, he's another one, you know, but yeah, like I think off the top, bam, they're kind of the ones. I mean, AKA, I've hit Ransom up on numerous occasions, you know. Yeah, man, just getting those sort of dudes, you know. I love hearing that history, man, you know, like I love that shit.
Now, as someone who, you know, does interviews, myself as well, there's, you know, we've got lists. Some of the names you mentioned are right on our list as well.
Yeah, bro, I'll bet, yeah.
And we've got some names that we just think we'd love to do, but we've accepted it's never going to happen for whatever reasons. Do you have any names like that come to mind? Nah,
because I think we can make them happen. I think, like, I don't know, man. There's all those people I've said, I believe that we could make happen at a point, man. I believe that it's there to be had. It's there to be done. But it's a matter of just, man. It's just, you know, like, you know, we talking with Shaz the other week, and Shaz was like, man, I was talking to Brad. I've messaged Brad. Like, I'm not tight with Brad. I'm not close with Brad. I have other friends that are, Len, and, you know, others are closer with Brad. But, you know, I've messaged Brad, and it's, you know, it's sort of like, yeah, even Puzz, like I said, we almost had him, we were this close, you know, and I think we had Trem that week, you know, and I had Trem, and I told Trem, I was like, man, I'm doing Puzzle next week, and Trem's like, word, you got Puzz? And I'm like, yeah, man. And then he pulls the pin at the last minute, you know, like, but, you know, it's no disrespect at all, man. Like, I get it. Like, even coming here, dude, even you guys getting me here, like, you know, it's taken, how long's it taken? 12 months? Of probably going backwards and forwards, really locking it in, me pulling the pin, you know, it's probably been about that, man. And, you know, like, so I get it, you know, like, I don't, you know, there's people that are, man, honestly, dude, like, you know, the Biz Beats and the Biz DMs, man, are just like, oh, can we come on the show? Like, you know, like, it's a fucking week by week thing, but yeah.
The one name that really comes to mind for us as someone who will just never get to interview is Prowler.
Oh, bro. Well, see, there you go. Yeah, man. That's me too. Like, I mean, no one's even sort of told me that Prowse is, I would imagine Prowse is aware of the podcast. He must have heard, you know, some of them. I mean, a lot of those dudes came up together. Deadly, I think, is someone, like I've hit Deadly up. He's someone that may never do it, you know. Yeah, Prowse, obviously, bro. Prowse, you know, like he's the, man, yeah, he's... Also Disguise, dude. Disguise is like the white whale, man. Like, I've spoken to so many dudes. You know, I've spoken to Johnny, like Johnny Jewel, Murder, Tame the other week. I'm like, man, can you get a Disguise, Astro Gaz from Melbourne, you know? And they're like, oh, we saw him the other week, but, you know, he's not on social media. He doesn't have a phone. And people, that's why I say he's like the white whale. People see him around, but no one gets a photo of him or captures, or, you know, there's just that odd photo, or, you know, there's some shit like that. So, you know, he's another one that's on the list, man. Like, he's another one where, fuck, I'd love to get that dude. But, you know, yeah, there's a handful where, yeah, I probably would go, yeah, it's, you know, yeah, I don't know. I mean, dude, listen, seriously, even getting Lays on there, man. Lays is like, you know, I might have to chain him to the back of the car, man, just to get him down there one day, you know, like that's what it is, bro, just to get him down there. But, you know, yeah, it's, you know, yeah, there are definitely some that, you know, are going to be harder than others. But, man, fuck, if we could ever get Prowse, you know, yeah, that'd be something.
Part of the reason I bring it up is because, like, we'd be happy to just see that interview anywhere.
Yeah,
Whether it's on our platform, your platform, or anywhere. I just hope that Prowler sees this and he reaches out to someone. Just so I don't care who. I just want to hear from the dude.
Oh, Prowse, man. I mean, listen, I've met Prowse in passing, you know, and that's it. He's a mega low-key dude, and, you know, he has his reasons for being that, and, you know, and he's just not about it, man. Like, you know, like I said, I've only met him in passing, you know, and I've just met him at a show down in Melbourne, and, yeah, like, man, get him Prowse. I mean, did you ever hear that, was it in Melbourne Triple R, that Richie dude that did the special, and I think they had Tram and Deadly, and they had a bunch of people speak, so they did a Prowse special. They went back to, like, the recognition tape, and they went through a bunch of stuff, and it was dope, dude. It was like 2 hours, and I think that is, you know, and Prowse wasn't even involved in it, but I think that is as close as we'll get to getting Prowse, you know, like, and who do you even reach out to, you know? You talk to Trem, you reach out to Deadly, you talk to whoever might be close to him, you know, man, we've spoken to a handful of people that are real close with him and continue to be close with him today, you know, like, even talking to Platonic Lab, you know, who's really come to the fore in terms of making music and, you know, being the drummer for the Hilltop Hoods, you know, he started out with Prowse, or, you know, he started out before Prowse, but, you know, he was deeply involved with all the Enough Said stuff. I mean, we spoke to Jace, you know, Jace, who produced all the old RDC stuff, you know. He produced 32 Lines. He produced, you know, some of the Prowse stuff, and going back through the back catalogue, he did so many classics, man. Biases joints, Trem joints, you know, joints for Lazy, you know, Freedom Fighters and all that sort of shit, and then even beyond, did remixes for On Being in Queensland and all that kind of thing, you know. So, you know, we've come close to the source, but we've never gotten the source, man, you know. Even J Red, like, you know, we've spoken to J Red, dude, and he grew up, you know, Noble Park, grew up around the corner from Prowse. Even me as a kid, I grew up in Noble Park, you know, so, like, you know, like, not grew up in Noble Park, but spent 2-3 years there as a kid, you know, so, yeah.
The other one that we get a lot of requests for that we've also accepted is probably just never going to happen is Jisso.
Oh, word? Really? Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, Reelsy, like a good friend of mine up here, Reels, he told me once, he said you should get Jizzo on, and I'm like, oh man, fuck, can we hunt him down? But yeah, I've actually never made any attempts to get him. Yeah, that'd be a fucking good one, man. That'd be a good one. Yeah, I haven't
to get, I reckon.
Is that right? Have you tried? Have you reached out? Because he's around.
Oh
he's
man, I've been trying, but
Yeah, Rilsey was telling me he used to spend a bit of time with him in Sydney, but whether he's open to doing this now, I mean, obviously he had his little doco on YouTube, not his little doco, his doco on YouTube and all that sort of shit, and years ago. But yeah, fuck, I never even thought of Jizzo, man. That's one, man. That's a good one, man. I never thought of him.
And in terms of the episodes that you have done so far, which do you feel has been had the biggest reception?
Cursor. I mean, obviously, Cursor, obviously, man. And Cursor was a highlight too. That came about super organically. I've got to send a big shout out to my man, River City, Julian Woods. Like, he's doing big things just in comedy and all that kind of shit and online content and all that kind of thing now. But yeah, he's a good connect. I met him through Crush City, and he had a connect with Cursor. Cursor was up here shooting a video, and he was like, man, I reckon I'll get Cursor on the podcast, man, and we've always had a rapport, so, DJ Decide, not always had a rapport, but, we've known of one another because DJ Decide, our DJ, he DJ'd for Cursor for a little while, did half a dozen shows with him around the country years ago and stuff like that. Even, I think, maybe did cuts on one of his albums, and Cursor was obviously a fan of Lazy Grey, Kenothan 750 and all that kind of thing, so, the Cursor episode was big. And then, surprisingly, man, last week, the Shaz episode, dude, that was a big episode, man, with the number two music podcast in the country with Shaz, Number one with Cursor and number one for a while, with Cursor. We were up there for, the better part of a week. But yeah, I mean, the podcast, man, honestly, Biz Beats and the Biz, it bugs us out, man, because we're consistently one of the top 20 music podcasts in the country. Each one of our episodes goes top 20, so there's that many people streaming it. And man, we're going off Apple Podcast numbers, so iTunes numbers and all that sort of shit. And even in 2020, we were the third most streamed podcast on Spotify. So, man, fuck, I can't pick it, it is what it is. In terms of the biggest episode, with hands down Cursor episode, easily. The Curse Effect, man. That's what he said when we left. I remember when we dropped that episode. Actually, no, I think he posted something of us in the studio. He's like, man, I just did a crazy podcast. The table's fucking littered with beers and durry ash and all that sort of shit. And man, we copped 200 followers just off his story alone, just an at in his story. So, definitely the biggest episode, man. But yeah, Shaz was pretty big recently. Spun me out how big Johnny Jewel was, having Jewel on, that was a big episode. That was, that was fucking well and truly top 10, so yeah, we've had some, even Tame a few weeks ago, just at the tail end of 2021. That was a pretty big episode, a lot of history, man, a lot of dudes like hearing that those stories, man, and those dudes, excuse my language, but those cunts live crazy lives, man, the shit they had to deal with, man, as kids, the transits and all that sort of shit, Peter Stevens, and man, Peter Stevens is fucking on some shit, man, and he was in charge of some fucking brolic, brutal motherfucking transits, bro, these dudes copped a hard time, so, some of those stories are crazy, and I think people enjoy hearing them.
When you mentioned interviewing Cursor, and I've heard parts of that episode. I haven't actually sat down and listened to it front to back, but that's one interview that you've done that we haven't had the pleasure to do yet. We hope that one day, he'll be able to sit down with us and have a chat. But as someone who was around Australian rap before Cursor, and is still heavily entrenched in Australian rap. Not after Cursor, but he's coming to his 10th album, and that was his whole thing, right?
Yeah.
How first of all, how much of an impact did you see him have, and do you recall the times of when the generation before Cursor, the way that he was received by that generation at that time?
Yeah, definitely.
In comparison to now.
Yeah, definitely.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, certainly, bro. Yeah, I mean, that when Cursor hit, man, Cursor hit big. There wasn't, I'm just trying to think what kind of hit like Cursor prior to Cursor. I can't even think the Hoods had hit already. The Hoods had hit, but Cursor came through on his own wave, man. Cursor came in and just came through, and he was. I think there's a precursor and post-Cursor version of Australian hip hop. There was what existed prior, and there's what has come in his wake. So like, dude, I mean, like, let's be honest, man. Like, there was a lot of fucking shit coming out of Western Sydney post Cursor, man. A lot of motherfuckers thought they could rap, and we've seen a lot of them come and go. But yeah, there's definitely a precursor and post Cursor. I suppose the initial reception to Cursor may have been, a reception of, the reception may have been met with a degree of skepticism in terms of what he was doing, but he's a fucking skilled battle MC. I mean, no one could take anything from those battles, that battle with 360 and all that sort of shit, man. And at this point, Cursor's a dude in his 30s, he's a father, he's fucking 10 albums deep. He's changed the game. I even think things like No One Network, man, like what exists here where we're filming from, man, the nerves and, the things that have come out of this in some way owe a debt to Cursor, man, like the Chillinits and all that sort of shit. That kind of shit has come post-Cursor, man, Curse really created that lane, man, but he took that lane from, he himself, he said it on the podcast, he heard Hijack and Torture. He heard Banned in Queensland by Lazy Grey, or Painted with Blood with Ken Oath and all that sort of shit, man, he came off the back of that and reinterpreted it and did his own thing, man, and then fucking went hard, man. The work ethic is, there's not many with that work ethic, there's people that exist. I mean, I think Taunts, someone like Taunts is fucking, not a cursor precursor, but he was, very unique and very much in his own lane, as were a lot of the Broken Tooth artists, so yeah, man, there's definitely a precursor and a post-Cursor, and I suppose the initial reception to Cursor may have been one of skepticism, but he's proven everyone wrong, man. Like anyone that was a skeptic, he's proven wrong, and he went around the country and brought people with him, as did the Hoods when they popped, the Hoods, I remember the Hoods, got 750 to support them on the Hard Road tour, and we fucking got booed off stage, man. Oh, we didn't get booed off stage, we did 45 minutes, bam, we smashed the set, but we were fucking man, they're chanting Hilltops over the top of us. Cursor, he's gone around the country and fucking, like I said, he brought DJ Decide, he got DJ Decide on board. Discourse from the Crate Cartel was his DJ for a while. DJ L Street from Perth, who was heavy in the Perth scene with Hunter and all those dudes. He's his current DJ, man, Cursor's deep in hip-hop. You got to give him the props. You got to respect him, man. You got to respect what he does. And him coming down to our podcast was a big look. We said it on there, man. And people have said to me since that I was pissing in his pocket or something. But nah, to me, man, that was the look, man. His presence was charitable to us, man, because he needn't have come on our podcast. And shouts to Jay too, JUF, because they came down together, And shouts to his brother Rates, man, because Rates is, Rates is another one I want to hit up. I got to get Rates on, I think you guys have had Rates, haven't you? You guys did Rates, yeah. So Rates is another one I want to talk to, man, and I haven't spoken to him via social media, but we have engaged. He's left comments on the BIZ page and, vice versa and all that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, definitely, man. Cursor, Rates, JUF, man, Forte at large. Man, there's a handful of dudes that have stuck it out, I mean, look at someone like Forte at large, man. He's been hosting his own thing, and all that kind of thing, There's fucking, man, dude's been doing this shit before. Even before us, and that's, I've got to hand that credit. Biz Beats in the Biz, as a podcast, it's less YouTube focused, but that's something we have to work on with it in time, We're slowly working on that, but yeah, man, these dudes harnessed social media and YouTube and all that kind of thing early and built massive fan bases around it, they harnessed it. They harnessed it when we were still looking at the internet like, what the fuck is that? Looking at the internet like pressing a button on a, on a keyboard, man. That's how we were looking at the internet, And yeah, those dudes did it, man. So yeah, all props to those guys, 100%.
Another episode that, I feel got a big reception, but maybe it was controversial reception or whatnot, was the episode that you did with Wrath of Terra Firma. That had a bit of a bang response.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
First of all, just in regards to that episode, did you think it would get that sort of reception? Or were you surprised when it happened? What were your thoughts about how that episode was received?
I knew, man, I'd obviously seen the kind of ill will towards RAF, and I'd seen how people's opinions had changed overnight based on, based on a 6-week affiliation with a political party. Pauline Hanson's One Nation, and none of us fucking support Pauline Hanson, and even RAF, I can state this now. He stated off mic. He goes, man, I didn't fucking, it was a leg up. He could get in there. He spent months with the Greens, and then the Greens had viewed his policies as being too right-leaning, and essentially all he was going against, most of his, his fucking campaigning or his, policy work was about Big Pharma, and One Nation offered him the platform to go at Big Pharma or to, get a seat on the Gold Coast or whatever. And it was a 6-week affiliation with One Nation. And man, I just saw people turn on him overnight, and I thought, well, man, one day this dude is a legendary MC. He's a foundation MC out of this country. The next day he's a fucking racist and you hate him. Like, it's, he was a writer and he was many things. And when we had him on the podcast, I had him based on, and then beyond that, he's an author. So he'd authored this book that I'd gotten that he'd actually sent me a copy of called Eye of the Beholder. And, and he's a Brazilian immigrant beyond that. Like, he's an immigrant here. I thought, man, that's some fucking interesting shit. So you got this dude running under the banner of One Nation, who's an immigrant, who's an author, who's a foundation MC, who used to be a writer, and who is now the subject of, a degree of criticism and, let's just say it, people aren't fucking with him now, people are putting posts up and saying that, essentially fuck him, and I was like, man, I'll have him on the podcast. In terms of the reaction to the podcast, no, I didn't expect it because I didn't even realize that many people listened to us at that point, to gain that level of criticism. And like the criticism, like fucking man, Raf goes, man. Raf is a brolic dude, man. He'll go. He don't give a fuck, man. He'll be in those comments going, Me personally, man, I'm just like, man, get in the comments, go for it, go for it. But then people started attacking me personally. They'd say there's no, I don't know, man. I can't even remember all the comments, but there was, they're fucking still there, man. Cunts can go through them. All the comments are fucking still there. Some posts that have 76 comments of people just going backwards and forwards at one another about, this, that, and the next. And man, it's just, you have your opinion, you're open to it, man. And like, with Beers, Beats, and the Biz, man, it's just a fucking open platform. And I find Raf to be an interesting dude. He's a good dude too, man. He's a fucking great dude, like a real great dude, solid dude, And when I just seen people turn on him, I was like, well, man, I want to have this dude on to get his perspectives and his opinions and to find out exactly why he chose that path. To me, that was interesting. To me, an author, an immigrant, as I've already stated, I've gone through the list, a foundation MC, a former writer, a prominent Adelaide writer, who turns, who goes to One Nation, and now keep in mind, 6 weeks, man, and some will say, man, there's no justification for that, that's blah, 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 you're supporting racism, like you're a proponent of that party, and, there was a few edits made, there's a few comments in there that, wound up edited out, and I think, those kind of comments generated a lot of fucking negativity, and then people attacking me, man. Like, man, listen, I'm built for this shit. I don't give a fuck, man. Like, you can say what you want about me, man. But Raf's in those comments, man. Like Raf's going to war with the animals, man. Like, he's in there with the beasts. Me, I'm just like, man, you cunts can attack. Fucking go, man. Go hard. Like we've been attacked before. There used to be things called forums years ago and shit like that. Yeah, it is what it is, man. I'm offering someone, you don't have to tune in. You don't have to listen, man. You don't like the opinions. Like, I remember hearing someone, I got screenshotted a Facebook post of that episode and someone saying there is no room for right-wing opinions in hip-hop. And I'm like, well, there's room for your opinion? How is there not room for just someone else's opinion? How is there not room for another perspective? That's all it is, man. It's just about just being open-minded, accepting your brother, accepting your sister, like your fellow human, and maybe better understanding them, rather than just immediately going, no, you're a racist, you're a this, you're a that. Like, why not understand a dude? And understand a dude that we'd embraced a week prior, a week prior to him announcing he's running for this political party. That's all it was, man. And it took a minute to get Raf on anyway, like I think Raf was out of One Nation by that stage when we had him on, when he came on the podcast, So yeah, man, no, I I didn't expect that kind of level of criticism that we faced with that episode, you know, and in large part because, man, I didn't even realise people are listening, you know. Like, I remember years ago, what was that show, fucking Big Brother, you know, and comes to be like, you know, like 3 weeks into, they come out of that house and they'd be like, you forget there's cameras there. You know, man, I forget people are listening to this shit half the time, you know, like I'm not, you know, we're just having a conversation, man. 20 minutes in, you forget, you know, you're obviously aware that the mics are there, but you're just having a convo, man. You're just fucking talking, you know, like, I say that too, like, you know, that's why I'm less inclined to go to YouTube, because it seems like everything on YouTube is about content creation, and I understand what content creation is, but what about just a conversation, you know, like, you know, the good old-fashioned art of conversation, just shooting the shit, man, just gas bagging, and then beyond that, better understanding that person, you know, rather than, you know, because everything on social media is fucking however many characters, a flick, and boom, you're out, you know, and then it's a shitload of opinion. I don't know, man, I'm just trying to understand someone, you know? And then also celebrate their music. Celebrate their music beyond anything else. That's what got lost in that episode, man. We were there to talk that, and that's what the majority of that episode was about. But, you know, I mean, motherfuckers treated us like we were hosting a clan meeting, like we were actually campaigning for fucking Pauline Hanson, you know? Like it was fucking crazy, dude, you know? And motherfuckers coming at me on a personal level, and I'm like, all right, man, fucking fire your best shot, man. I'm not disabling comments. I don't give a fuck. Go hard. Do what you got to do. Say what you got to say. Whatever makes you feel better. I don't give a fuck.
And I guess, look, obviously, when you get caught off guard with a lot of criticism, you know, that can come with its challenges or be a challenge in itself.
Oh, certainly. I won't, and not to cut you off, I'm not gonna say it wasn't a stressful week. It was a stressful week, man. You know, like it was kind of like, Jesus Christ. I remember the day the episode dropped. By that evening, like in the episode, it didn't go viral or anything. It was just the level of criticism that episode was generating on my social media. And I remember I went home, man, like I smoked a spliff, I popped 2 bells, and I drank half a bottle, and I was blind drunk. I was separated at the time from my wife, so I'm in my house by myself, and my wife actually picked up the phone and she goes, "You all right?" Because I can see what's going on your social media, you know, like, and she's like, come up, you know, come over my place. And, you know, like I was drunk, you know, I was just like, fuck, this shit's heavy. So I'm not going to say it didn't have a negative impact on me, man. I was copping it, you know, like I was feeling it, but it's kind of like, you know, like I'm not going to get up tomorrow, you know, based on what someone has to say about me. I'm not going to keep pushing based on, you know, your opinion of me, you know, like it is what it is.
When you're running a podcast, lots of different challenges. And, you know, I guess, first of all, you mention, you know, popping some vows, smoking some weed, drinking half a bottle, and you're just, you know, chilling out on the couch. Now,
dumbing out, dude, dumbing out.
I recall, I could have the time wrong, but I recall like, could be 6 months ago, 12 months ago, you took a break from doing the podcast and you put something on Instagram expressing you were having challenges with substances or alcohol, family
100%.
stuff.
100%.
Can you talk a little bit about,
certainly, man.
you know, what was going on and the impact that it had with the podcast?
Listen, dude, I suppose, I mean, it fucking, like, man, it shot everything to shit. Like, everything just started breaking down around me, man. So it was, you know, like, and there was, you know, like, there's a degree, like, I take on a degree of responsibility trying to get this podcast out week after week. And it's on my shoulders. It's on my shoulders. Biz Beats in the Biz doesn't happen unless I fucking go do it, you know? And then, like, you know, I have a stressful job, and then I have a home life too, you know? Like, I have a wife and daughter. And it's, you know, it's like, man, you're just fucking getting pulled in every direction. You're just trying to do everything. And then you got to work too, you know? So, like, you know, you're just trying to do everything. And, man, like, you know, I suppose the music and partying and all that kind of shit, like, man, I've been drinking since I was 13, dude. Like, seriously, man. Like, you know, I fucking, you know, I mean, I probably tried my first beer, you know, I remember I thought about this once, man. I was like, I probably tried my first beer at 10. When I was in Melbourne at a cousin's place, and then, you know, you'd sneak sips of your mum's West Coast coolers or some shit, or wine, and then by 13, you know, me and my cousin get a bottle of Bacardi, get drunk on that, and then by 15, 16, man, you're just pissing on, you know, you're pissing on weekly by 15, 16, and then by 20, dude, you're in clubs, and you just fucking, and, you know, we're trying to rap, we're out there every week, and sometimes you're out there 3 nights a week, boom, just, you know, drinking, and then as that life kind of, and this isn't to excuse it in any which way, but as that life kind of, you know, as it slows down, you know, kids come along, you get married, you know, things start to change. the party still exists somewhere, you know, and we're still in pursuit of that life, you know. And there's many that pursue this life without the use of substances. Unfortunately, I haven't been one of them, man, you know, like, and I've just been open about it. And, you know, man, like fucking party drugs, like coke and fucking all that kind of shit comes along with it. And, you know, like when you reach, it's not that I've ever reached that I've ever viewed myself as having reached any real status, but doors open, man, doors open. And then when those doors shut, you look to open the door, you know, so you're like, okay, well, fucking, you know, where is it? Like, you know, motherfuckers will be like, you know, you'll be doing gigs and dudes are like, come have a cheeky, let's fucking, you'll be drinking until 5 a.m. and then you're back home or you're just whatever. And, you know, like, that doesn't work when you're married, trying to hold down a job, trying to put out a podcast every week, trying to get your daughter to school on time, trying to be a functioning, not just a functioning member of society, but a functioning, present husband, father, the best person you can be. It just doesn't work, man. It doesn't happen. And man, I was fucking smashing it hard. And honestly, like, and if I'm honest with you and honest with myself, man, it hasn't stopped. Like, I still drink a lot, man. Like, you know, I fucking drink every other day, you know, like, it's just, I don't know what it is, man. It's something I want to get on top of. It's something I'm working at. It's something I'm very fucking conscious of because, you know, I'm fucking 41 this year, man. I've been smoking cigarettes since I was 15, you know, like, it's, you know, and drinking for that long and then using drugs and then fucking, you know, like, and it's just, I think, you know, when the party dies down in your past, I know I can only speak for myself, like, you try and bring the party with you. So all of a sudden you just bring the party home, you know. When your daughter goes to bed, you're pouring a drink and fucking, you know, bashing cheeky rail and stuff, and then sitting up until midnight and then not going to bed, popping some bells, smoking some weed just to get to sleep, and then up again at fucking 5:30, man. You're just not functioning right. And then it impacts your marriage, man. You're making bad decisions. You're not, you're leaving the house deliberately to go get fucked up, you know, like, you're just getting out of there because I don't want my missus on my back, you know, like, it's, you know, it's fucked shit up, and it's fucked shit up on numerous occasions, man. Like, you know, like, dude, I've been a cunt hair from divorce for the past 5 years, man. Like, you know, and that was pretty much where it, you know, that's where it really hit, and things just dissolved around me, man. Everything left, and I definitely slowed up, but it's not something, it's certainly not something I completely have control of, man. Like, I'm just aware of it. I'm just learning to harness it a little bit more. But, you know, drinking is my gateway, man. Like, I drink, dude. I drink, you know. I definitely, you know, I'm not a drunk because a drunk would imply that I'm a loser. But I'm definitely probably, man, I'm probably an alcoholic, man. I probably got issue, and it's not, you know, like years ago when we were the town drunks, you know, 750 days and all that kind of shit, it was something you kind of broadcast and you embraced and you were proud of. At this point, I wouldn't say I'm proud of any of it, man. None of it actually, and not proud of, like, even coming here today, I was like, man, should I buy a 6-pack of beer? And I was like, just dickhead, just drink water, you know, like, just come here, do what you got to do and just drink some water, man. If you want to go home and have a couple of beers this afternoon, do that then. But, you know, it's just also, you know, things can escalate, you know, so 6 beers and then it's like, fucking, all right, I want a bottle. And then, you know, I get halfway through that bottle, well, I want more, I want to keep going, you want to feel elated, you know, it's probably self-esteem, it's probably many different issues, man, but it's definitely, it's not a, you know, at this age it hasn't had a positive impact, you know, or it's not having a positive impact on my life, you know. It's just something that, you know, and it's bugged out how it evolves, you know, like, so I have a better paying position in life currently, you know, and, you know, I'm in a better position currently. But, you know, the stakes escalate. So instead of just drinking at home, you know, we go out for dinner, you know, and then I kind of normalised that behaviour to my 6-year-old daughter, you know, like, because mum and dad go out for dinner, it's a handful of drinks and then it's stopping at the bottle shop on the way home. Let's not implicate my missus in anything, you know, like, but, you know, we both enjoy a drink, you know, and it's kind of bettering ourselves, or bettering myself as the leader, as the man of the family, you know, as the man of the house, and, you know, or you know, like, you know, to be perfectly honest with you, man, what remains of my house, because it's sketchy at best even currently, you know, it's, you know, it's something we're working at, you know, and I've been through it, you know, like, and I've never fucking gone to an AA meeting, I've never gone to an NA meeting, like, you know, my substance abuse is recreational, but my drinking is probably, you know, a little more than recreational, certainly. And it's something like, you know, like my dad's dad, my nonna, like it's not to say that it's hereditary or anything like that, but he was a heavy drinker, and it's what I've been around most of my life, you know, like I said, I worked in factories, warehouses or job sites, and you knocked off, you went and drank, you know, like it's just how it was. And, you know, writing raps, going to the studio, and we'd fucking drink, you know, we'd be in the studio drinking, we'd be, you know, drinking, partying until 3 a.m, get a cab home, you know, like, and that's all well and good if you don't have responsibilities, you know, like if you don't have a kid waking up in the morning, or, you know, like if it's just you and your missus, man, you don't have that level of responsibility. It's all well and good, each to their own, man. Everything's fucking cool in moderation, but yeah, when moderation turns into excess, it robs you of success, you know, like it sounds like a fucking soundbite, but you know, like that's kind of what it does. And you know, if I'm honest with myself, man, it's something I still battle. Hard body, hard out, you know. It's something I'm more aware of, you know, certainly more conscious of.
So we're talking about, you know, some of the challenges of running a podcast. Now, the Biz Beats and the Biz podcast is what you're currently, you know, doing. That's your main focus within music and hip hop.
Yeah.
But that's come off the back of, you know, years and years in the studio, on the mic, on the stage.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to get into now is at which point, I mean, you're originally from Brisbane.
Yeah, bro. Yep.
And, you know, everybody picks up, people who rap tend to, you know, start writing their raps in high school or whatnot. And it's in their late teens, early 20s when they start, you know, recording. Now, for you personally, the introduction into rap as an MC, how did that happen for you?
Man, I can pinpoint it to seeing Lazy Grey rap with the Resin Dogs in 1998. I tried writing a rap when I was a kid, like when I was 12, 13 and into rap music, but there was nothing, you know, there was no point of reference. There was no one, like, you know, to my knowledge at that point, you know, I'm 12, 13 in the early 90s. So, you know, there was nothing there. So we tried writing raps as kids, just briefly. And then as teenagers, I'd gotten out of rap music and gotten into punk music and all that kind of thing. Started a band, had a band for 2 years. And then in 98, I went to the Gardens here in Brisbane. There was like a festival on, and saw the Resin Dogs for the first time. Had heard of them, but I don't know what they had. They probably had the Grinning CD single or 7-inch out at that point. And, you know, Jigsaw Jeff had made tapes, you know, they had music, but saw the Resin Dogs for the first time, and Lazy Grey walked out on stage with them, wearing the big tea cozy, got the dreadlocks, the whole thing, and fuck, dude, like that moment on changed everything, man. Like that, I went home that night, I was there with my girlfriend and a friend, you know, and yeah, I went home that night and fucking started writing raps from there on in, man. It was just like, it was a game changer, dude. It was a game changer. Seeing that dude come out on stage and go, you know, whether it's beer or whether it's bud, the Resin Dog clicks out, they stays in front, and just rapping Aussie and rapping about beer and smoking weed and fucking boom, boom, boom. You know, it just got me. It hit me straight away. And I was like, this is it. You know, this is it. And then I'd met Lazy because, you know, I'm from the south side of Brisbane, originally from down in Logan City. And, you know, going to high school, we went to a party once in Algester, and I got introduced to Lazy Grey. I'd heard of him on Fat Tape and stuff like that, and he'd been in Hype magazine. Like there's photos of him with Rapid Fire in Hype magazine, and you know, I was at a party in Algester when I was in grade 11, and I got introduced to Lazy Grey, a mutual friend of ours that lived in Algester. He goes, dude, you got to meet Lazy, you know, because, you know, I got a band and blah, 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 and whatever. He goes, you got to meet Lazy. So I met Lazy. And, you know, it was brief, man. We're at a party. We're drinking. I'm probably 16. He's 6 years older than me, so he would have been early 20s. And it was just like, you know, I remember what he said to me. He goes, bro, there's only two forms of music, good music and bad music. That's what I remember of the conversation. And then the following year, I'm at the Botanical Gardens, and I think it was something to do with Hype magazine, like because the Hype twins were spinning, and you know, like they were breakdancing there, and there was other bands. I can't remember, but I remember seeing the Resin Dogs, and like the Resin Dogs were dope. And watching the Resin Dogs, this is sick. Like, you know, this is breakbeaty. You know, like it's dope. And then this dude comes out on stage and just like, man, the drums hit and then he spits. And, you know, he's got the vein popping out his neck and he's on stage and he's just, you know, just fucking killing it, man, killing it. And it was a game changer, man. It was a game changer. I got the Black Stump tape after that, got the Grinnin' single, you know. I think the Black Stump tape came out slightly after that because I remember I was at TAFE, like, you know, like when you leave school, I'd done shit at school, so I'd gone to TAFE to do 12-month course of year 11 and 12 again. It gave you like a certification of having completed grade 11 and 12. I'd gotten through grade 11 and 12, but just barely. And I was doing this thing, and I remember being at TAFE, I picked up a Scene magazine or a Time Off, one of those street press newspapers, and on the back page was a little quarter-page interview with the brothers Stoney, with Black Stump, about the Black Stump cassette. And I remember, man, I just took that newspaper, folded it under my arm, went from South Bank TAFE, crossed the bridge, went to Rocking Horse in town, bought the Black Stump tape off the shelf, went home and went home with it in my Walkman. You know, like, I always had a Walkman on me. I always had fucking 5 or 6 tapes in my bag. Always had a Walkman and then a Discman and shit like that, you know, going through to iPads or iPods and whatever as, you know, the technology increased. But yeah, man, that watching Lays in the Gardens that day, and then, you know, having met him the year prior, and then yeah, that's when I put pen to paper. I'd later work with his brother. That's how I'd come to be closer with him. I met Ken Oath, like, you know, because we're all from surrounding neighbourhoods. Algester was over there. I'm from Browns Plains. They're from Woodridge. You know, like, they're down in Logan and stuff like that. So there's the Writers Anon, you know, the TBK dudes at the time. They were all writers, obviously. They were fucking prominent graffiti artists. And yeah, then that tape came out, and, you know, and then, you know, I left school, left that TAFE course that I was just talking about, and wound up doing a sign writing pre-vocational course to go into sign writing. And I'm doing work experience for that, and Lazy's brother walks, well, you know, Malice, Scott, he was working for the same company, and I'm talking to this dude, and he's like, oh, you're into hip hop? Have you ever heard of this, that? And like, it was just like, boom, you know, like, so, yeah, started hanging with Scott, and then meeting Lazy and becoming closer with Lazy and Eric through him initially, you know, and yeah, that's kind of how it really kind of sort of takes off, you know. And, you know, me, Proof, Overproof Pete, Phil at the time, another friend of ours, because we had a group called Mathematics, so we were playing like live hip hop, you know, off the back. But dude, that was, you know, we started that based solely on seeing the Resin Dogs and Lazy Grey rapping with the Resin Dogs, man, you know. So that's kind of how it all sort of just starts going where it goes, you know. Like, I remember Lazy and Oath came down to one of our jam sessions, our practices one day. We're practicing down on the south side of Brisbane at a place called Springwood, where we had rehearsal studios, and we're in there rapping, and they came down and rapped with us, you know. So, you know, that'd be like fucking 2000, 2001. I think it's before like the Twin Towers came down, because I always sort of pinpoint things around certain things, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, the towers hadn't even dropped yet. Like, the Black Stump tape was out and all that sort of shit, and then, yeah, all that kind of fucking thing happens after it. And, you know, because actually the first time we did anything like that was kind of like even remotely a 750 show was a 9/11 benefit at the beginning of, it must have been 2002, and it was an early show we did at the Zoo where I rapped with Ken Oath and Lazy Grey. It wasn't 750, I think it was billed as something else. I can't even remember what it was billed as, but, you know, that was my early stages. So, yeah, we'd already been rapping then, you know, so, because, you know, through Oath, I'd been invited up, so, you know, invited up to rap with him and Lays and do this little benefit thing that a dude had organised, yeah, at the beginning of 2000, I would say around 02, you know. But yeah, definitely, the tail end of the 90s into the early 2000s, man, it starts with Lays, man. I really think most things start and end with Lays, you know, in terms of what's happened in this city, you know, like, you can pinpoint a lot of it to the influence of Lazy Grey, whether you know that, or, you know, or even of an age to acknowledge that. He did everything in this city, man, before anyone, you know, like, it's, you know, like, he's like the patriarch, like a Hams. A Hams is a patriarch of hip hop in this city, like, whether you know it or not. Like, man, just from the graft then to working at Rocking Horse Records and selling all the aspiring MCs the music that would inspire them, you know, like, you know, they're like the dudes that did it. Lazy, you know, Hams, you know, like, all things kind of start with those dudes. Even Lazy's older brother Scott, Malice, you know, like DJ Catch, you know, dudes like that.
just on the topic of lazy, you'd remember 3 years ago, 4 years ago, there was a piece that SBS of Iceland did on Australian hip hop. And in that, it was a controversial piece, and Lazy Grey was one of the dudes that, people were saying that the documentary maker threw Lazy under the bus, and there was a big uproar. Now, do you recall when you first saw that piece and what your initial thoughts were on that?
Yeah, dude. I saw it just prior. I was going to the UK. I was going to the UK with my wife at the time, with my wife, and yeah, I saw it just prior, and then when I landed in the UK, I'd seen the furor of what, not the furor, but of what was going on. I don't think it was really like you would consider it a furor at that point. But man, yeah, he was kind of embroiled in it, dude. I was invited to the Have a Beer shoot. I think we're in the Have a Beer video. But we were invited to the shoot at Kangaroo Point. When they shot that video, Nick Grace. And I really think like. Man, Lays copped it over that, man. That was poorly researched. Not that I'm a journalist, man, but I'm just trying to pick my words. I suppose there was a, what would you say? There was a backlash towards those Australianisms at the time, so that ochre culture, people started viewing it as being like whitewashing black history in this country, in some capacity, when that's the furthest thing from the truth, man. That Have a Beer era and that beers, bongs and barbecues era was a scene finding its voice, man. That's all it was, we can't rap like they do in Queensbridge. We can't rap like they do in Compton. We don't have those experiences, but we're all very conscious of, we're all very conscious of the people that came before us and, all that kind of thing. And we're all immensely conscious of race and discrimination and all that kind of thing, man. There's just no time for it, and Lazy, dude, Lazy of all people, man, Lazy's a gentleman, man. Lazy's a very gentle dude, very quiet spoken. Like I said earlier, man, just trying to get him on the podcast, I want to talk, man. And he does not want to be thrust into the fucking spotlight like that, that's not him. And all he's ever done is just make music. And beyond making music, he is the father of a culture in this country. He's one of the forefathers of a culture. And that's what they missed there, because what they missed was that's a scene in its infancy. We had the barbecue song by Mass MC. We have a Beer. We had people like, we had people like Brad and Trem and others and Bias and all that. Bias was writing songs about smoking weed. Brad and Trem had numerous beer references, getting drunk. I grab a slab of the tinnies, pack of blue winnies, blah, blah. Man, that was the shit. That was what that shit was. And, Ken Oath, he had Kingswood Country, lined up. And Kingswood Country, if anyone goes back in the history books, is probably one of the most politically incorrect Australian sitcoms of all time. Ted Bullpit, it was fucking, you watch it today, you're just like, man, that shit wouldn't fly today. That shit wouldn't fly, so it's, I think to link it to race and, making there was an innuendo that, I don't know, there's some sort of race. I can't even distinctly recall, so I don't really want to speak on it. Maybe you remember better, but yeah, it was. I know it was a heavy time for Lays. It was definitely a heavy time for Lays, and I remember, man, I just landed in the UK, and I was like, man, I'm putting a post up for Lays. This is fucking not right. It's not right, man. It's not right. He is the father of everything we do in this country, man. And he's the furthest thing from fucking racist. Holy shit, man. The dude marches. The dude fucking goes to marches and all that sort of shit. Man, he's an activist, if anything. He's definitely a person of strong opinion. Has his opinions on whatever, even COVID and all that kind of shit today. But man, yeah, it's what they were labeling him and branding him in the media. And as an aside, Ken Oath, I don't think Eric really copped it as much. It was really Lazy that they sort of targeted in on. But, I think even Earthboy came out after the fact and said, man, that was a bit of a hack job. You know, like Earthboy was in there talking about something, and he's like, if I had have seen that they, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't know exactly what he said, but I think I do recall at the time him saying, had I have known that they were going to sort of throw Lazy under the bus like that, he would have been less inclined to be involved.
When you've seen the piece, you're overseas when you've caught wind of this, but did you, at least at some point, if not straight away, have a chat to Lazy, and how did he feel about it when you guys had a chat about it?
Oh, dude, I remember Lazy telling me, he's like, every time, he said every time he was going to his phone, like if he went into social media, man, there's fucking, it's kind of like, what he told me about that then kind of reminded me of what we kind of went through briefly with that RAF incident, not the RAF incident, not even that it was an incident, like just with RAF's episode, like it kind of felt like that, because he'd be going to his phone and he goes, man, I just wish it would fucking stop. Like even people coming out in support of him, he was just like, dude, just fuck this shit. He'd go to his phone, there's 100 comments, and I remember him saying it was good for one thing, he got a shitload of fucking new followers out of it or something like that, like that's what sort of came out of the social media, but if there was any positive, but I don't distinctly recall the conversation that we had, but yeah, I remember it just being a lot. It was a lot for him to deal with, man, and I think he saw those that came out in support of him. I think he was aware, it was like, man, there's a lot of support for him. There was, this dude had done whatever, and I remember going to that dude's page and seeing his Instagram profile, and people were commenting, people were, writing, you don't go at Lazy like this, I think I even fucking went on there and left a comment, I went on there and left a comment, so it was, yeah, it was what it was, man. I was a fucking, I've even had my troll moments, so, in the early days, before I even knew what that was, But yeah, it was definitely a stressful time for him, I can say that much, I do recall that, yeah. When we came back, we were there for 2 weeks, and I came back and I was like, fuck, dude, what was all that about, Because I'd wake up and I'd just see the social media and I'd see how his shit is blowing up. And then I think he posted something. I think, he had a barbecue in the backyard or something like that, and he just posted the barbecue sizzling. He did something, it was pretty funny, man. It was a good post. But then I'm pretty sure he may have deleted it after the fact. But yeah, it was a stressful time for Lays, man, for sure. And it was definitely an unwarranted and, poorly researched piece on what Australian hip-hop culture is, or was at that point, was at that specific point, isolating a song from, 2001, that's about beers and barbecues, and they're in Foster's singlets and VB singlets. I mean, come on, man, it's kids getting drunk, dude, around a barbecue. It's people establishing an identity here in this country, that's all it is, things have to grow out of something, so that's kind of how I saw it.
I guess in regards to Lazy Grey, those who know he's, one of the kings of the culture.
Yeah.
In 2004, I think it was, is when he dropped Banned in Queensland.
Yeah.
2003, 2004-ish,
04.
maybe 2005, somewhere in that period.
Yeah, it was 2004.
And you actually ended up touring with him on that release.
Yep, that's right.
Now, at this point, had 750 Rebels already been officially a thing, or that hadn't happened yet?
Yeah, it was pretty much there. We were the town drunks, and we'd perform, Riders Anon disbanded, so Riders Anon, Riders Anon were always focused on graph. Half that crew, Reels, Kid C, Rick, Biarski, they were graph focused, and Eric Ken Oath, he became... following Have a Beer, he appeared heavily with Lays. They did Methylated Spirits on the Stone Broke album, and then Eric had the joint on, Drunk as a Skunk with the One Can. All She Wrote on Culture of Kings. So Oath had sort of started focusing on rap, and we were focusing on rap, as the town drunks at the same time. We'd had a crew called Mathematics, so we were doing a live thing, and then that disbanded. There was just, it was just what it was. We were kids, that kind of disbanded, and we focused on just MCing, on rapping. And we came quite close with Oath, and then through Oath, we started supporting a lot of the Brothers Stoney shows, so Lazy Grey and Lenny. And, because, there's only, there's you know, if there was half a dozen crews in Brisbane at the time, that's what it was, you know, like, you know, there was us and there was a few others, there's the Optimum, the Coalition, UN Who's Army, and then, you know, a handful of others of some degree of prominence, you know, that would get the support slots, you know, when a touring artist came, when a US artist came or an artist from the UK, you know, there was only a handful of artists to go to support those hip hop acts when they came to this country. So, you know, we kind of became the go-to guys, the Brothers Stoney and then the Town Drunks. And I saw, like, I mean, we travelled to Adelaide. I travelled with Oath. I was Oath's hype man. I was his hype man, but I was doing half the show with him. We had a show in Adelaide in '03 at a place called Jimmy Rose at the time. And we got flown over there for that. And Lays was there at BVA's working on Banning Queensland. So we did the show one night, and then we were there for 3 days or something. We did the show one night, and then the following day we went to BVA's studio, Crookneck Studios. And Lays was sleeping on the floor at BVA's making Banning Queensland. So we heard, like, you know, we were the Town Drunks, and I remember he played us the song Town Drunk. He was like, it's named after you guys, you know, like he'd named it after us. And then Oath was there to record for Painted with Blood. And Oath wrote his verse for Painted with Blood on the spot, you know, like just fucking sat down, penned that song on the spot and recorded it. And then, yeah, we came back to Brisbane. Lays may have gone from Adelaide to Melbourne, you know, because he had a partner in Melbourne at the time. And then he came back to Brisbane, and Banning Queensland was not far away. Banning Queensland hadn't dropped, and he handed me a CD. It was the demos, or it was the mastered version of Banning Queensland. And it was tagged on by Ransom, like, so Ransom, you know, Ransom, BVA, and Raph Boogie, you know, Mnemonic Ascent. They were running Crookneck. Raph was running some of the business behind it. Ransom was obviously the DJ for Mnemonic, and he'd played a role in Banning Queensland. Obviously Raph too, you know, but BVA had recorded a lot of it. And I remember I wish I still had this disc. I just had this CD, and it had like a sticker on it that said Lazy Grey Banning Queensland, but then it was tagged by Ransom around it. And I remember Lazy handed me this disc, and he goes, "Man, I need you to learn this." And I was like, "Oh, why?" And he goes, "Oh, you're going to come on the road with me. You know, you're going to do my hype man." And I was like, "Oh, what about Len? Or what about Oath?" And he goes, "Oh, this is different. This is new now. This is King. This is fucking Banning Queensland." And I was like, "Wow." And he goes, "Man, it's between you and Peter, you know." But we used to hang out, you know, like it was, we're all hanging out together at the time. You know, 750 was kind of maybe loosely formed at that stage. I don't know if we were all flying under that banner yet, but post Banning Queensland, when it became like the whole kind of crew getting up on stage, that's when it really became 750. Because 750 started as like a drinking crew in the suburbs of, you know, in the southern suburbs of Brisbane, in Algester. A bunch of old school dudes, you know, like, you know, older dudes than myself that were 750, you know, and still to this day, 750 dudes. And, you know, it became the rap group more so post Banning Queensland. You know, that's when it really kind of formed. And at a point, it was like 9 of us. You know, so it was DJ Decide, it was his missus, Miss Brown, it was all the Town Drunks, the 3 of us, it was Lazy and Lenny, it was Oath, and then it was also the Riders and Non. It was, you know, so many others. Like I said, all those dudes from Algester, and, you know, countless people, man. Like, that's what 750 was this huge, loosely knit crew of people that drink together and rap and paint and do all this kind of thing, you know. But yeah, it was kind of forming pre-Banning Queensland, you know, like, because the Brothers Stoney shows and all that kind of thing, you know, like, I'm pretty sure we supported all those shows, like Brad Strutt when he came to Brisbane, the Authentic launch, you know, the Authentic LP. I remember doing that with Ken Oath, and Overproof got on stage with us, and then Brother Stoney did a separate set, you know, but like, it goes back to all that, you know, it goes back to the Authentic launch, you know, so yeah. And then, you know, then we started doing bigger and bigger shows, like 750 started building that sort of reputation post Banning Queensland. But I always say, I think a lot of what 750 was, or maybe continues to be, the you know, I don't know, maybe like the mythology and all the sort of whatever that exists around 750 in this town. I mean, you know, Bias B used to come up here and he'd be like, "Man, that's 750 country." You know, you'd walk through the Valley Mall if there was a hip hop show on, and every cunt had a 750 tee, you know, like, wow, I used to see it years ago. I was bugged out, man. It was just like, wow, you know. And yeah, like, I think a lot of it was built on, you know, what Lazy Grey did with his music. And then the culture we built around 750, so the drinking culture, we were constantly out there. DJ Lopsided, you know, Lops had come out of jail. Lops was an old Algester dude, and he'd come out of jail and reconnected with us, and he became the Town Drunks DJ. And, you know, and then, you know, obviously Ken Oath connecting with us as the Town Drunks. It became like the Town Drunks. And then Lazy Grey and Lenny with the Brother Stoney Gav over there, DJ Decide. So Decide was in THC and TBK with the Riders and On, you know, but he hadn't established himself sort of alongside the Riders and On. He was still painting and working and having a family and all that kind of shit. Like Gav was pretty much like the first one to have kids and shit out of everyone, you know, like, but then he was also the first one to probably, other than Overproof, to set up a proper studio, you know, so for all of us, for 750 to kind of come together and record, you know, but yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but.
And why the name 750 Rebels?
It was the milliliters in a Tolly, 750 mils to a Tolly. It was a largie. That's what it was, dude. It's like I said, it's a loosely knit drinking crew, a loosely knit crew of individuals that drink, you know? And how we used to drink was Tallies, man. It was 750, you know? Like, that was 750 mils. That's what the fuck it was. 750 Rebels. The Rebels, you'd have to ask Lays. I don't know where they got the Rebels, but yeah, because it was Lazy, his older brother Malice, a dude called Bluey who used to run paint in Mitre 10 in town, like before there was any paint stores up here. You know, everyone used to go to Mitre 10 to buy Krylon, Belton, boom, 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 and Bluey was the dude they bought it off, and Bluey was 750. He was from Algester. There's dudes like Lopsy, you know, we're going back to the early 90s. My friend Gaz Hazard, his brother-in-law, Mortar, you know, he was 750, and his older brother as well. Andre Zoniak, you know, Aaron Gardner. These are names that won't mean anything to people watching, but, you know, they're people that deserve credit for, you know, the early days of 750.
In 2007, that's when the first, you know, 750 Rebels release is out, and therefore, I guess, for the record, that's when it's officially, you know, a crew.
Yeah. The first and only 750 Rebels release, pretty much, man. Like that's, yeah. I think you might be, there was a thing we did when we supported the Hoods. I think when we supported the Hoods, I can't remember. We did a big show up here in Brisbane, and we put out a thing called the Sneak Peep. But it was more like a compilation of songs we'd all been doing, you know? Like, there's a couple of 750 joints on there, but then there's a Town Drunks track, and there's a Lazy track, and there's a Ken Oath track over an old Most Def instrumental or something like that. And yeah, but I mean, pretty much the only official 750 thing that ever dropped was the 12-inch Spit Vicious 12, and dropped in 2007.
And is there a reason why there was only one 750 release ever?
No, not really, man. Like, there's no real reason, because we actually we spent a good period of time trying to make a record, but man, like, we'd all just, like, we'd get together and it would just turn into a party, man. Like, that's largely what it was, you know? Like, we'd just get in the studio, we'd have fun, and, you know, like, it just didn't happen like that. We made mad songs. Like, the songs, you know, if you type 750 Rebels into YouTube, the songs you find are probably, if they're not, what was this? I can't even remember. It was Spit Vicious, Rise of the Rebel, and Hostile Takeover, which was the 12-inch. And that was distroed by Checkout Wax, and Checkout Wax claimed it to be the fastest selling Aussie hip hop 12 at that point in time, because they shipped 300 copies. Well, we did 300, I think 250, because we all took 5 or 6 or whatever. 250 shipped immediately. So, like, you know, every store just fucking wanted it, and it sold, you know, like, it sold the fuck out quick. But man, we made songs. We even had, like, you know, I remember Gav, DJ Decide, he put together like an outline and a guideline of bringing the 750 record together. And there's songs, man. There's probably songs that have never even come out from then, but most of them have come out. Like, when I was leading up to my solo record in 2012, I did these Purgatory things. The 750 joints that are on those were songs from those recordings for a potential 750 album. Like, there's even an old Stealth magazine with a Checkout Wax ad on the back. Actually, I think it's an ad for, might be an ad for Death Wish Cast's album, whatever album came out around that time. Like, we're going back to the, whenever, 2008, 9, 2007, whenever, but a Stealth mag came out, and along the bottom it says upcoming releases, 750 Rebels, full length, blah, 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 you know, but it never happened, man. And we'd get together and, you know, like, it didn't happen organically anyway. But yeah, the only official 750 Rebels release was the 12 in 2007. That was the one. Bunch of songs done in and around that, but yeah, that was pretty much the only one.
You then mentioned that a few years later in 2012 is when you dropped your first solo album.
Yes, yeah.
And one of the songs, I think one of the singles off that album was Deuce Deuce, and you did like a 7-inch for it.
Yep, Deuce Deuce, yep.
Now, I went back because there's the video to that single, and it's great tune, great video. A lot of people, I think, that I've spoken to look at that as, you know, one of the favorite Jake BIZ songs, you know, for them.
Yeah.
And you had a line in there that was interesting that I'll quote. It says, "I'm from Brisbane where my DJ used to stick up servos."
Yeah.
And then after doing a little bit of research, correct me if I'm wrong, but your former DJ, he did 5 years behind that and then passed away due to a drug overdose?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, Lops. Lops at a point in time was like a brother to me, a big brother. But you know, it's kind of like the relationship we had at various points in time. Loving. You could hate Lops one day, but that was what loving Lops was. You know, like Lops was a hard-headed dude, man, and he was my best friend. He was like one of my best friends. You know, he's like an older brother. He's 6-7 years older than me, but yeah, he did 5 years for Stick Ups. I think he got 6, and he got out in 5.5 or something like that. And he he was a bad heroin addict as a kid, and you know, he did a number of years in and around that as well. Like, you know, like he did 5 years solid for Stick Ups, for the Stick Ups he got caught for, and then he came out and he was clean for ages, man. He DJ'd. You know, he was DJing with us. He'd focused his energies. You know, he'd started hanging out with us because we just drink, you know, and he was a drinker too, you know, and then slowly post. So I'm just thinking about, I'm making commercial hell, like when I'm working on my album, like he just started disappearing again. And, you know, we all kind of knew what was going on, but we were just hoping for the best, you know, and, it kind of got him, and then, man, I didn't see much of him for the final years, you know, like I remember my wife was real close with Lops too, like, you know, we were all real close, you know, we were all real close for a long time, and then, you know, just, man, like, we were talking about addiction before, man. I don't think any one addiction is different to the other, but heroin is a motherfucker, you know, like they say it's harder to get off than cigarettes, and man, I've been smoking for 25 years, like, you know, I know how hard that is, you know, so to get off smack, to get off heroin, you know, and he did well to kick it for as long as he did, but he went back to it, and then, it was kind of like the end of things. I don't know how much I should say. Well, I mean, you know, like Lops is gone. Lops was never ashamed of it, you know, like I remember saying to him once, I was like, man, should I put this line in here? And he's like, fucking hey, I'm not ashamed of it. I fucking, you know, I did my time, fucking blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, word, that's all good, you know, like Lops was, you know, you ask anyone, man, like Lops used to be, you know, like a lot of dudes, a lot of HG dudes, like broken tooth dudes, they'd stay with Lops when they came up, you know, he'd organise weed for dudes and shit like that, and he's a fucking good dude, man, like just a real, like a jail-sharpened wit, you would say, man. Like, he had a fucking, like, man, he was like that. Like, you know, like, he was a smart ass, you know, and he was a funny dude. But he was also a real raw dude, you know, like, he'd fucking, you know, the wrong person could take something Lops said. You could misconstrue it. Well, I wouldn't even say misconstrue. You could just fucking, Lops could offend a lot of people, and he could offend them easily, you know, and it, you know, almost landed dudes in a lot of fights and a lot of hot water and shit, you know, like he was, you know, he didn't give a fuck when he was full of piss, man, you know, and and unfortunately he kind of just gravitated back to it, man, you know, like that shit's a bitch, that shit is hard, man, and as someone said to me, man, heroin's different to everything else, heroin's a sickness. You know, it's like you need that medicine, man. You wake up in the morning, you need it every fucking 7-8 hours, you know. I don't know it personally, man. It's never where I've gone, you know, like it's not something I've ever gone towards, but you know, like, and it got him in the end. And I only found out recently that it got him because I thought he was getting off it and that's what got him, but nah, it got him in the end, man. You know, like it's just, there's only so long you can live that life, and from what I was told, like I said, I was kind of estranged from Lops in the last maybe 4 or 5 years or something. You know, if we're talking about lines, I got a line on Pig City, on the song Pig City, where I said, same back it had to turn when my friend chose smack, you know, and it should be same back it hurt to turn when my friend chose smack, because it was like, you know, I remember going over there, I'd made some money off Commercial Hell and Deuce just selling that, and I was still chopping him out his money, knowing where it was going, you know, and then when we had to practice for the shows, I went over there once and, you know, like he had no electricity, so we paid to put his electricity on and get his internet back up and all that kind of shit, and, you know, it's just was what it was. You know, he's a brother to me. I fucking love Lops, you know, and I think about him a lot now. You know, I think about him a lot now, and I feel, you know, like, yeah, I feel some kind of ways about him, man. Like, it's sad, you know, like, and it's sad that, you know, you think maybe could you have stepped in more, but you just lose him, you know. It's kind of like he's gone, you know, but he was still, you know, he was sort of on the periphery of things. Like, he was hanging with people that I knew, or, you know, he'd sort of flutter in and out of circles and stuff, and, you know, like, I know some people that saw him towards the end, like in the last, you know, sort of last year or 6 months or whatever of his life, but yeah, it was sad, man. Like, it was sad, and that fucking, man, that H is something, you know, that gets him, man. It gets him, and it had him since he was a kid, you know. It was a battle he'd fought since he was Christ knows what age, but he was a fucking remarkable human being, you know. Like, he was a dude, like, he was 16 years old, man, and he told his mum he was going to stay at a mate's place up the road. He jumped a train into town, then jumped a Greyhound bus to Sydney to watch Run DMC at the Hordern Pavilion in 1988. He's 16 years old. He's telling his mum he's going to stay up the road. Like, that's kind of the life Lops lived. He was adventurous, man. Like, he got out of jail. He got out. I think like 6 months after he got out, he was in France. He met a girl. Then travelled through Europe. He DJ'd through Europe, like, you know, that's when he first discovered DJing, and then came back to Australia, you know, like, he was a dude that could fucking do it, man. And he was a dude that just had the gift of the gab. You'd see him with chicks, bro. Like, you know, to look at, he mightn't have been much. Like, he was a tall, gangly, foul-mouthed dude covered in boob tattoos, like, you know, boob jobs, but fuck, he could just talk, man. You know, like, he's a remarkable dude, bro. A remarkable human being, and, yeah, I miss him, you know, like, he was a good DJ too. He was a good DJ, you know, that's kind of what gets forgotten in Lopsy's, you know, like, you know, what little people know of Lops, and I hope, you know, more people know of Lops, you know, via this kind of thing. And I've spoken about him on the podcast and shit, particularly after he died. I remember it was Jigsaw Jeff, we had Blunted Stylist, Jigsaw Jeff on the podcast, and I kind of dedicated the start of the show to him, so you could go find that episode and hear what I had to say about him on that, but yeah, it's fucked, you know, like, because this year, you know, 2022 is 10 years since Commercial Hell, and he was my DJ, you know, he DJ'd the entirety of Commercial Hell, but we started losing him at points through that. Like, he'd just disappear, man. I remember I wouldn't get a reply, and I'd go to his house, and I'd be like, man, is this cunt dead inside? We all knew what was going on, but we're just trying to keep him there, just trying to keep him in the mix, and all that kind of shit, and yeah, it's sad. It's sad, you know, like, it's just, it is what it is, but it's also, it's a sickness, man. Like, that fucking, you know, that needle, man, that heroin. It's a sickness, you know. Once it gets them, you know, and it's, you know, there's not a lot that come back from it, and if they do, they're fucking fucked, they've done well, man. You know, like, and he did on numerous occasions, you know, so he did well. He went through those withdrawals, and if you ask anyone about heroin withdrawals, like, man, they'll tell you, it's fucking torture. You know, dudes, you know, like, I remember Lops telling me, laying naked on a jail cell floor, having out-of-body experiences, sweating, you know, because couldn't get a shot, you know, like, sometimes it's the only thing that gets them off them too, gets, you know, people off the smack. It's getting locked up, man, because you inevitably, like, man, it's a fucking hard thing. It's not like, you know, like we were talking about drugs and shit earlier, man, like, man, recreational drug use is recreational, you know, you say all things are, you know, all things okay in moderation, you know, but like that sort of shit, when you need that medicine, when it becomes your medicine and you need it every 6-7 hours, well, how are you going to facilitate that life? It costs money, man, you know, and you can't work. I got him working with me at a point, like I got him a job with me because he didn't work for years. He was just slanging weed and getting the dole and doing whatever, and you know, I got him a job with me, and he was turning up, man, like he's turning up fucking, like we'd be working and he'd have to sit down. And I'd be like, what the fuck are you doing, cunt? Like, get the fuck up, like, look at you. He goes, I wouldn't do that, Jake, I wouldn't do that to you. And I was like, man, you're fucking kidding yourself, bro, you know, like, and then, but you know, like he'd say to me, man, and this still sticks to me this day, he goes, what's the difference between this shit and that shit you shovel up your nose? And I'd be like, You know, and I'd have well, I didn't do 5 years over, I don't need to rob someone for it, I'm not doing it fucking every day, I'm not, you know, but like in the broader sense, in the long term, he's fucking not wrong, man. Like he's exactly right, dude, you know, like whether you're partying or whether you're fucking, you know, you're sitting on the fucking floor of a fucking crack den shoving a needle in your arm, like, man, like there's a lifestyle that goes along with both, you know, and they're both as destructive as one another, you know, like maybe heroin slightly more so, you know, you can get off other things, you know, you can kind of make other things recreational or whatever, but, you know, probably booze, you know, the booze and the smack are the hard ones, man. You have physical withdrawals, you have sickness from getting off them, you know, and it's fucked, you know, like, yeah. I miss him, I miss Lops, man. Rest in peace to Lops. DJ Lopsided, Daniel Klops, yeah.
Fast forwarding to now, the podcast is a thing that you're focusing on. And really, I mean, that really covers like a good 20 years that you have been invested in the whole culture of, you know, rap and hip hop within Australia. Now, as somebody who has been, you know, knee deep in it for such a long time, and you've seen styles change, and, you know, you've seen different cities really take the torch or whatever. If I was to ask you your top 5 acts all time in Australian rap, hip hop, and your top 5 current quote unquote new school Oz rap acts, it can be solo artists or groups, who would you pick?
5 from my generation, or from the generation that influenced me, I could probably easily rattle it off as, well, hands down, Lazy Grey, Bias B, Trem, Brad Strutt, and I would probably throw Reason in the mix. I'd probably say those 5. 5 of the new generation, and not because Kyle's sitting over there, but Nerve, what fucking Nerve is doing is just remarkable, man. Like, dudes are taking it to another level, man, you know? Like, you know, there was a time in this city where we kind of, like, as 750, we were a little bit cocky and felt unrivaled, you know? Like, it was like, man, 750, who's ever going to compete with what 750 other, beyond say King's Connected, you know? I'd throw a Culprit, man. I'd throw Culprit. King's Connected is, I'd throw him. Checkmate, you know, like for me, like if I had a top 10 of my generation, like I think Checkmate's indisputably or undisputably one of the greatest MCs out of this country. Taunts, you know, Bigfoot, like there's a handful, you know, Delta, a bunch of them. But yeah, in terms of this current generation, Nerve, Mitchos the Menace, 100%. I love Scrub, man. Scrub's just a fucking quirky, charismatic dude, man, you know, like, and to come from what he comes from, like to come from buttfuck New South Wales and the bullshit that he had to deal with, like, yeah, man, he's something. Fuck, who else? I mean, Posse Shot. I mean, how can you go past them? They inspire. They're inspiring the generation that inspired me. Look at what Brad's doing now. Brad's working closely with Carney and that, and they've been big supporters of what we're doing with the podcast, so I'm greatly appreciative of Posse Shot. You know, and they're also culture driven, you know, like they put out a series of 7s designed by Puzzle. Like, you know, you'll hear a Tame DMA reference in their lyrics, you know, or a Dual reference, or, you know, whatever. And that's 4, a 5th. Oh, JK47, dude. Dude's incredible. Yeah, JK47. Yeah, 100%. That would be the 5, man, for me. Of the current generation, you know, because I look at what they're all doing individually, and they're all kind of doing what we all did, but on a whole nother level. Like I was talking to Kyle about it before, just sitting here in the No One Network studios, man. Like just, you know, they're building, they're creating business, man. Like it's inspiring to someone of my generation. It's something I'm almost trying to play catch up on, you know, like because I'm doing this podcasting thing, so I'm doing different things now. Like I'm sort of not as focused on getting a song out, but you know, I'm dropping we're dropping these conversations every week and shit like that. I'm kind of inspired by what I look around and see here, you know, like it's bugged out, man. It's just like, this is hip hop, dude. This is what hip hop can build, you know, and it can do this. And it can, there's many and varied ways to engage with the culture of hip hop and the art form itself, you know, and you're seeing these dudes do this. You're seeing them harness social media. You're seeing them push things so much further, like sponsorship deals and, you know, like, man, you know, it's shit. You know, like, I always think fucking Run DMC, man. You know, Run DMC did it all before everyone. They did movies, sponsorship deals, shoe lines, fucking go through the list. They did everything before everyone. And what we're seeing that next generation do is just, it's crazy. But even still, like the generation, you know, so those, my top 5 MCs, they're still active, man. Like, you know, Bias might claim retirement or whatever, but Bias is still pumping out fucking however many 7s and 12s a year. He just dropped a new album. You know, Trem's helming uncut. Like, you know, they have a quality over quantity, you know, ethos, you know. So, you know, but I mean, I don't know how much I can say, but I do know that there's new music in the works coming from them, you know, like, or coming from that label, you know, with Kings Connected and whoever else. Anyway, that's for them. But you know, what Lazy's doing with Lesser Known, what Brad's now doing with Posse Shot, what, you know, I mean, I think Reason's just, you know, Reason, but, you know, like, man, dudes, you know, like, dudes are still, they don't stop, man. Like, this life doesn't stop, dude, you know, and if you are as passionate about it as a lot of us are, it just can't stop, you know, it can only continue, you know. Even you don't hear from Delta for however long, but you know he's digging, you know he's visiting somewhere, you know he's doing something, you know he's sitting there talking and politicking with someone. Like, he's incredible, man. Like, you know, like Len One, like, you know, Lenny is a huge influence on me, and seeing how he's transitioned into a label with another dear friend of mine, Chubbs, you know, like a kid called Chubbs and Lenny with Miles Ago, you know, like, man, it's amazing shit, man. It's amazing shit how things move and how things kind of, you know, they're, you know, like those specific things, Beers, Beats and Biz, Miles Ago and Lesser Known, and, you know, you've got Keno tattooing and all that kind of shit. He's an incredible tattoo artist now, you know, like, and grown into that over the past decade. They're all extensions of the 750 brand and extensions of the same creativity we brought to rap music, to hip hop, to the stage, to the song, to the booth, you know, whatever, wherever.
Last question is, if you took Oz rap and you look at, like, in sports how they have a ladder, if you took Oz rap and took the cities and had to create like a top 5 ladder of who dominated Oz rap, say, in your time, from your era,
yeah,
and then if you do the same for the current now.
Yeah.
So starting with the old school, I guess, your era.
Yeah.
Who do you think? What city do you reckon had it, and then go down the line from number 1 to number 5?
Well, for me, it's easy Melbourne. Like, for my generation, easily, man, easily. But then Adelaide had to have been a close second. Sydney third. I mean, I would put Brisbane at the arse end of that list, bro. I would put Brisbane down the bottom, because Brisbane really wasn't recognised until like where the Lazy sort of started coming through. When Lazy sort of started coming through with Band in Queensland, the Black Stump Tape and Brothers Stoney, they'd gotten some recognition. But, you know, Brisbane would largely, even into my generation, because I kind of considered those guys just above me, but, like, even still, we would generally go between Brisbane and Melbourne constantly. Brisbane and Melbourne constantly. When we were dropping music and touring consistently, we were going to Adelaide here and there. You know, went to Adelaide probably half a dozen times, went to Perth once, went to Sydney 2-3 times, but we were in and out of Melbourne for a number of years constantly. So, you know, for me, Melbourne was always there, from graffiti to rap music to, you know, just to visiting a city, man. To me, it was like visiting New York, you know, like the first time I went to Melbourne, man, felt like I was in New York City. It was just like, wow, you know, like, and I only can make that reference now having visited New York City. It was just that it was like, man, it was like going to this fucking hub of culture. Like, the streets were fucking bombed. You know, hip hop was alive, you know, like, it was crazy. And then, I would say Melbourne, Adelaide, Sydney, because Sydney birthed it, though Sydney, you know, beyond Death Wish Cast, and man, I won't say Sydney wasn't an influence on what we were doing, but Sydney wasn't a heavy influence on us up here at that time. It just wasn't. And I remember even when we first did our first shows in Sydney, we were kind of like, man, is anyone even going to come? Like, do we even have a presence in Sydney? You know, you got to think it's pre-internet, you know, like, well, not pre-internet, but it's pre-social media and all that kind of thing, you know, like, you know, we're like, man, and then Sydney would roll out. Like, Sydney would roll out for any of our shows, any Lazy Grey shows or 750, man. We had some great shows. We had some incredible shows in Sydney. But then I would put Sydney, and I'd put Brisbane down the bottom, man. I mean, we forget Tassie, but I've never even been to Tassie. And then Perth. I mean, Perth, dude. Like, Perth were over there dominating with syllabolics. I mean, you had... And that's... You know, I should probably put it Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, Sydney, Brisbane. You know, like, that's how I would go down the list. Northern Territory, you know, man, shouts to anyone in the Northern Territory, but I'm entirely ignorant as to what's going on up there. I don't know, you know, like I meet people from the NT, from like Darwin and shit like that. Incredible dudes, man. Everyone's like mad characters come out of Darwin, but I don't know what's going on up there hip hop wise. Never went there for hip hop. You know, went to Perth once, you know, like no one wanted to fly 3-4 dudes from Brisbane to Perth, man. That was $600-700 flights, you know, like it just wasn't viable for anyone, you know, and for the numbers we draw, you know, to get hopefully a couple of few hundred people to a gig, you know. But yeah, you know, I would put Perth probably third on that list because Perth was thriving with syllabolics, with, you know, Downside, Matty B, fucking all that. I mean, every city thrived, everyone thrived. It's just where it sat in my books. And today, I suppose it's kind of different. I mean, I think Sydney came to dominate in you know, over the past few years. Like, you know, like we were talking about Cursor earlier, you know, that title, that tsunami that Cursor was, you know, like a lot came along with that, you know. So there's a lot of people inspired by his movement that have, you know, built a movement today, you know, like, so I would put a Sydney probably up there. I see a lot of rappers coming out of Sydney. A lot of rappers coming out of Brisbane, man, out of the fucking western suburbs of Brisbane now. You know, heaps, man, heaps. Like, mad rappers and rappers with huge followings that I'm largely kind of ignorant to, that I'm largely unaware of, you know. Like, they're not in my sort of, not in my sphere, you know, like I'm not kind of, you know, someone will say to me, have you heard such and such? And I'll be like, nah, and I'll check him out. And I'll be like, man, dude's got like fucking 75,000 followers on social media, and fucking I check a video and a video's got fucking 150,000 views and it only dropped 2 weeks ago, you know. I'm just like, fuck, you know, like dudes are doing shit. In terms of today, man, yeah, I suppose Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, I mean, yeah, dude, it's all relative. For me, like what I came up in, it was definitely Melbourne. Melbourne held that pole position for most of us. You know, today, different story, but yeah, I couldn't tell you how today is. I know Brisbane's kicking goals though today. You know, like, you know, Brisbane's definitely up there today, where it was on the bottom of the list back then. You know, it was really only a handful of groups coming out of here, and we were largely ignored until, you know, the mid-2000s, you know, like people were aware of Lazy and Black Stump and the Resin Dogs, you know, and a handful of others, Decipher, you know, there might have been a few others, but yeah, you know, that's kind of how I view that one, man.
The lesson. 927.